We're live. We're here.
Hello.
So, Debbie, we are officially live right now. Cool. So, welcome everybody. Happy Monday. Happy Memorial Day. Some people weren't sure if we were going to do this, and I was like, of course we should do this. Like, we have people waiting and wanting to ask questions, right? And today, guys, I have Debbie Miller-Massa here with us. She is an OCD warrior. She provides a lot of support to the community, and I wanted to bring her on. She's going to share a little bit about her story, and then she's going to, from her perspective, try to answer some questions. So she's got lived experience with OCD. She's also going to talk about substance use. My name is Jenna. For those of you who don't know, I'm Jenna Overbaugh. I am a full-time therapist at OCD. So we're here to just tell you a little bit more about OCD, get you to maybe have some of your questions answered. So whether you're here from Facebook, whether you're here on YouTube live stream, feel free to ask your questions. And we have, you have me and my perspective, but we're also going to have Debbie here. So we're all really excited to have you, Debbie. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. Why don't you take a couple minutes and just tell everyone your story and kind of where you're coming from, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Okay. Sounds great. Hi, everyone. So I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to talk to you about what I call my experience, strength, and hope, living with OCD and having a substance use disorder. However, I do talk about a little bit about addiction disorders as well, behavioral addiction disorders. So for me, OCD was prominent for me when I was a child, but I didn't know that. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that I was living in fear. I didn't know what it was like when I was running back and forth to the door. I didn't know any of that. I just lived it. And I just lived in fear my whole childhood. So that sums up my childhood. Just constantly, in fear, anxious, and doing things that I didn't understand why I was doing them. And then it kind of settled in. And then it got, it really came to head, I would say, in 2014. Now, let me make this clear. The trauma of my father passing away did not cause my OCD. Trauma does not cause it. What occurred was my OCD decided to rear its head and say, okay, you're weak, here I come. And that's exactly what happened.
I love that you said that, because I think there's a misconception that there is like a cause, and a lot of people try to find a cause, and there's never cause. Yep, it's exactly like you said. It's like, yep, this is a vulnerable time. I'm coming in. So that's great.
Yes. So with that being said, in 2015, I would say it took about a year. Well, maybe it was creeping up on me. And now with coupled in with maybe substance use disorder in the past, but not prominent. And my choice was alcohol, which was my choice. And it was for me to not feel, for me not to have emotions, for me not to know how to be happy, not know how to be sad, not know how to be anything. But the OCD reared its head with me being a full-blown perfectionist, a full-blown checker, and now realizing that I have intrusive thoughts. My intrusive thoughts are quite, I wouldn't say there's something that other people have not experienced, but there's something that I realized are intrusive thoughts. I was blessed to have gone to the OCDI unit in Boston for 6 weeks. And I did ERP for 4 hours a day, which is exposure response prevention. Basically, you have to, I personally had to take my pocketbook and spill it out, close my eyes, walk away from it, and then feel that anxiety. It was the toughest thing I probably ever had to do in my life. But it was so worth it. And that in conjunction with ACT, which is acceptance commitment therapy, which goes along with CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, I did as well, challenging my thoughts, challenging what was real, what was What were these thoughts all about? And I think for me, the OCD really took over, and I don't want to minimize OCD at all. Anybody who is suffering right now with OCD, it is probably um, out of all of the mental illness that I have, it's probably the one that I would I call it the beast. It's the hardest one for me. Anxiety disorder, I don't minimize it. ADHD, I don't minimize it. For me, I was taught with anxiety disorders, I kind of just level it off and say, okay, you're here. I acknowledge you. And I just kind of let it be. And then it kind of diffuses itself. I don't fear them anymore because I do a lot of meditation. Meditation has been incredibly helpful for me. And then, so for me, that was key because I was checking labels 100 times. I mean, like checking my kids' labels, how to wash it. It wouldn't stop. It just would not stop. I wanted it to go away. And I felt the more I did it, the more it would get better. And the more I did it, would get better.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it didn't. That's what OCD wants you to believe.
It feels so real. Like just one more time. Like it's this time. I know it hasn't been helpful in the past, but it's this time. If you just do it one more time, this is what you need to do.
And it was just a huge issue. And when I got, anybody who doesn't know what exposure response prevention is when I was there, one of the things they made me do is not look at any of my clothing, throw it into the washing machine, shut it. I said, well, wait a minute. Don't I look if I washed it on cold or not? No, you stick your black and whites in together, throw it in, turn it on, boom, go. And I did it. And I lived in that, like, it's called a SUDS rate. And you might be able to better explain what SUDS is. But, I lived in that anxiety. But, I have to tell you, it seriously was. If anybody is suffering out there, there is such hope. And there is a happy life with OCD. There is a life with having, I'll talk briefly about substance use disorder. So for me, they're all different types of substance, of alcoholics. And for me, mine was needing to have 2 glasses of wine or 3 glasses of wine to take away any emotion that I had. Now, where I find that it ties in with OCD is, and where I want to bring it to the surface is, I go to AA on a daily basis, Alcoholics Anonymous. And so they're a big believer, and I believe in it too, is that now I am more of a spiritual person than I am a religious person. And I do get down sometimes on my knees, which is not typical of me because I didn't believe there was a God after my dad died. And there are some days where I will get down on my knees. And guess what? There are some days that I will pray in the shower. And I do it because I want to mess up OCD. I don't want to get into a regimen. I don't want to learn what page in the big book the prayer 7 is, 7th step prayer is. I can't. I know I can't. If I want to learn it, I go on the internet and I go, okay, what's the 7th-step prayer? The one I know by heart is the Serenity Prayer. It's the easiest one and I love it. But any other prayer, this is where I think the missing link is. So for anybody who's suffering from an addiction, whether it be sexual addiction, whether it be gambling, whether it be any type of addiction, it's an addiction. It does not matter. It's an addiction. And OCD can feed into it. So I had to make sure there were a certain amount of little bottles of wine in my refrigerator when I came home. I had to make sure that if I said to my husband, hide them, I would want to know where they were. Not because I so much wanted to drink them, because I needed to know.
You just needed to know.
So exactly. So there's
you didn't want to feel that uncertainty. You don't want to feel that anxiety of not knowing, like that. You wanted that safety behavior.
Yes. So there's absolutely, in my opinion, I believe, if I'm correct, and what I've done for research, but Jenny, you can help me out here, that like 25% of people who have OCD also suffer from substance use disorder.
Oh, for sure. And it's a matter of what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? So
It doesn't matter.
yeah. And so
It
my
really,
husband, he worked at Rogers Memorial Hospital in the
yeah.
substance use disorder residential program years and years and years ago. And for the longest time, they just focused on substance use disorders and the treatment of that, but they didn't focus on anxiety or trauma or OCD. And so he really worked to establish a system where like there were professionals in there, not just to work on the substance use, but on these other issues. And it was
Correct.
always a matter of like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did the trauma come first and then the substance use, or did the substance use come before the OCD? Like, it's all interconnected and they all feed off of each other. And so I think that's why your experience and your background is so unique. So really quickly, like, how did you, once you recovered and once you like dedicated yourself to your recovery, how did you turn that into helping support other people in your community? Because now you run a huge group of individuals who also struggle with similar things. So what's that all about?
So I decided to share how I find peace and how I find serenity. So I decided to come up with a group called Serenity Promises, where I was going to show people everything to me that meant something. What is positive? It could be, and it's kind of a test, but it could be anything from singing, because I believe music is therapy. It could be something that I find on the internet, a beautiful quote. It could be anything that relates to positivity, but I'm very transparent on the site. I will tell people that I sit with an emotion in the morning that's uncomfortable, but what do I do? That's the key thing, is what do I do with this feeling of being anxious? What do I do with this feeling when I wake up in the morning? Because I do. I wake up in the morning with an intrusive thought that says to me, Debbie, you know what? I think you should shave your legs today. Or I think you should put on deodorant this way. Debbie, no, do it again. Debbie, don't do it again. Debbie, do it again. Debbie, don't do it again. I mean, it goes back and forth. And so, I think it's about, for me, it was about picking and choosing, like, which one am I going to do? And that's what I do. I just basically tell it to go away. And I can't even use the F word on here, but that's what I tell it to do.
We know, we had this conversation before.
Yes, exactly. Because that's the only illness that I do tell it to just, you know what, I'm not, I'm making a decision, and whatever that decision is, I'm sticking with. And let me make this clear. If I make a mistake and I do look at something, I move on. Because if it's not taking up every part of my life and I'm able to function on a daily basis, then guess what? That's a win-win day for me. So I came up with the group Serenity Promises. And then to move on, I came up with the group OCD. I was going to originally do substance use disorder, but I decided to add addiction disorders too, because I felt that when being in the rooms of AA, I heard a lot of people say they had eating disorders, that they, prior, they had gambling disorders. They have, these things. We, as people who have OCD and people who have any substance use, we're never recovered. We're always recovering, because you always have it. And that's okay. It's how do you find happiness within it? Mm-hmm. So the next one I opened up it's called OCD We Stand United. For those that really just struggle just primarily with OCD and other types of anxieties. So I have all three of those groups. And I also have a website that I've created called Serenity Promises, which is kind of the parent group of all of the three groups. And that, I guess my message to all of you out there is, do I live every day without anxiety? No. Do I live every day without an intrusive thought? No. Do I challenge my intrusive thoughts? Yeah, I do. I look at them. I mean, if anybody was looking at me in the morning, they would literally think I was crazy because I talk back to them. I do. I'm up alone. Because I'm up very early in the morning, but and if I don't meditate that day, like I have not been able to meditate the last 4 days, and that's okay. That is literally okay. Like, I'm going to be okay. And I know I'm going to be okay. And my OCD is not going to tell me that I'm not going to be okay. I am going to be okay. So I don't live a day every day that it's not stressful. Today I've had a very stressful day. I have felt very agitated, but am I going to die from it? No, I'm not.
Mhm.
But I can live through it. And I just want to let everybody know with this last message, you can live a life with OCD. And if you feel or you think you have substance use disorder or any type of addiction disorder, it's okay. You can get through it. And if you need the help, it's out there. You know, it's really out there because the OCD can fire it, because OCD will attack anything that is meaningful to you in your life. It knows exactly what is meaningful to you. And that's what it wants to attack. But there is peace and there is hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to like hear more and dive more into some of these questions because
Yes.
like it's one thing to say professionally like what my advice is, but as someone who's been there and like through the ringer, I'm so eager to just like hear your experience more and hear your feedback for these questions. So thank you so much for sharing your so inspirational
my
and I'm
pleasure.
so happy to be here with you. My goodness. And you sound like you had awesome therapists. Like the fact that you feel so strongly in your convictions and in the interventions in the treatment, even after, like as you're able to be by yourself, that's really a testament to what a great student you were when you were in therapy. And I think that's what it takes to manage your OCD long term. I think you really need to digest and collaborate and on your treatment plan. Like you can't just do the things that your therapist wants you to do. You really have to take it in and digest it and apply it to your life. And it seems like you just kicked total butt with that. So way to go. Way to go. So guys, we'll wrap up at the end too. I'll make sure Debbie tells us exactly where you guys can find those communities, where you can find more from her. But let's get to some questions. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Cool. So I'm going to bring one up here and I'm curious to hear your like personal experience with this since you've been through ERP. So this is from Josh Michael. During the duration of ERP over the long term, is it normal to have periods of more thoughts and more anxiety? And I definitely have a kind of professional like thought here and some guidance here and an explanation, but I want to hear your thoughts just personally having been through it. What was your experience in ERP? Did you feel like you had times where you had more thoughts and more anxiety during ERP?
During it, yes. More anxiety, absolutely. That's exactly what they want you to do. That's the purpose of it. You need to face the fear. You need to face exactly what the OCD is telling you that you want to do. You have to do the exact opposite and face it. So the anxiety is definitely going to raise. I know you don't want it to raise above a 10 SUD level. That's not where they want you to be at, but it definitely does raise. As for thoughts, you can have racing thoughts, but you know, we had counselors there that really kept us busy, and we talked about, you know, life, and we kind of I think it was kind of a distraction, but trust me, your mind is still on that thing that's sitting there, that, you know, that pocketbook that's sitting there. So I would have to say, I don't know that my thoughts increased. I think it was more that they were there. And are we talking about intrusive thoughts or just thoughts in general? I think, you know, I think thoughts in general, they're all, yeah, pretty much there. Yes. But I don't know that they increased. What's your thoughts?
And so I think just like you were saying, Debbie, I think that this higher anxiety in treatment is indicative that you're resisting or reducing your rituals, which is what you would want to be doing, right? So with ERP, you have the exposure piece where you are actively going out of your way to expose yourself to anxiety provoking situations. So it makes sense that you're going to feel a little bit more anxiety and that you might have more evoking of those thoughts, right? But you're also having the response prevention or the ritual prevention. So if you are resisting your rituals and your compulsions as you should in the treatment, then of course you're going to feel a little bit anxious, right? I always liken it to, you know, if I'm used to always going to the store and my son asks for a piece of candy and I'm used to giving it to him, when I suddenly stop giving him that piece of candy, he's not just going to bow down and be like, okay, cool, I get it, right? He's going to have what we call an extinction burst, which is where when you stop reinforcing a behavior that you've typically reinforced, meaning your anxiety and your rituals too, you temporarily see an increase in your behavior. So the same way that my son would throw a temper tantrum when I suddenly say no to him asking for a piece of candy, our anxiety is going to increase when we suddenly all of a sudden stop doing these rituals. Our anxiety is going to be like, what the heck are you doing? How do I get this response out of you? So it's totally normal. And I wouldn't interpret higher anxiety necessarily being a sign that something is wrong. It could very well be the fact that you're just making some changes, and it's going to take a little bit of time for your brain to kind of catch up, but definitely talk to your therapist about it. We wouldn't want anyone to, like Debbie said, be at like a 10 out of a 10 on that subjective unit of distress scale, that SUD scale. So that's not the goal either. We don't want you to be debilitated by your anxiety, but some anxiety is going to be, kind of par for the course. And that will come down eventually, right? As I continue to, withhold that piece of candy, as hard as it might be for me and for my son, have to listen to the temper tantrum. If my goal is to break that relationship of him asking for candy and getting candy, what I'm going to have to do is not give in. I'm going to have to, like Debbie was saying, not look at the washer, not go back and look at my pocketbook or whatever it was that Debbie was not having to do. And you're gonna have to resist your rituals, and eventually we'll get better.
It does.
Yeah, it eventually
it lowers each time you do it.
Yeah, Debbie, do you have any? I hear so many times people just get, because ERP is not immediately gratifying like compulsions are, or like substance use can be, right? You really have to put in the work, and it's not immediate where you feel better. So what advice do you have for people out there, like when you're putting in all this work, but it doesn't feel better just yet?
I don't think anything that is worth doing in life that you really want to do, if you don't put in your full 100% or 95%, then you're not going to get out of it what you want to get out of it. I think that I was given this great phrase, short-term pain for long-term gain. So let me tell you, living with OCD and active OCD is 110% worse than going through ERP. And that it's like anything else. If you go out jogging, the first time you go jogging, you maybe can jog just a little bit. And then the next day you jog a little bit more. And then the next day you jog a little bit more. Well, it's the same thing with ERP. If you can withstand OCD active, then you can do ERP.
For sure.
Just put in the work and work hard at it. And then you can live an amazing life. And I promise you that.
Yeah. Well, I think this other question is like a great segue, kind of right up your alley and what we're talking about. So I have therapy tomorrow, but I may ghost her. Happens all the time. I feel bad, but I'm stressed and I can't stop thinking about people dying, which is obviously a really common intrusive thought for people. So yeah, you're already talking about there's help out there. It's not going to feel good right away, but it's effective and it will work. I would obviously encourage you to give it a try. Just take it one session at a time. Take it 1 10-minute block at a time. Just show up. The hardest part is going to be signing on to that session or showing up in person to that appointment. That's going to be the hardest part. Of all the people who I've worked with, the hardest part is just getting there. The hardest part is just signing online. The hardest part is just showing up to that door. The rest is taken care of. And I don't think I've ever, maybe everyone's situation is different, but I don't think that I ever could meet someone who said like that wasn't worth it, that like they got nothing out of that session. So especially when it comes to ERP, because it's so effective. Exposure and response prevention is more effective for OCD and anxiety than any other treatment for any other disorder. So you're going to get something from this session. And of course, the fact that you're saying like, I can't stop thinking, that's even more of a reason to go to therapy. That's even more of a reason to show up to that session. These are not things that your therapist is going to be flabbergasted by. These are not things that your therapist is going to judge you for. A good therapist who's well-trained in exposure and response prevention and working with people who have OCD is going to have heard this story 15,000 times. Obviously your story is unique, but we deal with this situation all the time. We deal with situations of people having an increase of thoughts, not wanting to come and present those thoughts to someone, not wanting to share, just wanting to isolate, wanting to say that they almost didn't show up to the session. I have people messaging me all the time saying, I'm so nervous for my session. I'm so nervous for my session. But they always are glad that they came. So my encouragement is that you show up and that you give yourself that chance, because ERP is so effective. You'll get something from that session. And, you know, maybe it goes bad, but maybe it can go really, really well too. Debbie, what do you think?
I think that it's a lot worse living with thinking that someone's going to die, constantly going through your head and your OCD controlling you. Mm-hmm. I think it's so... I totally validate your feelings of being scared, totally validate them. But I cannot say enough that going there, maybe she's not the right person or he's not the right person. That might be okay. That's okay. But you know what? It's so worth it. It's so much better than living in the OCD world. I'm telling you, give it a try, face the fear, because living with those intrusive thoughts, it's not a life to live. You can live a much better life. So I say go for it. No ghosting.
Yeah, no ghosting. There's a really cool meme or graphic that I saw on Instagram once. It was like that cartoon where there were two buttons. There were two buttons, and above one button it said ERP anxiety, and the other button said OCD anxiety. And it's like, either way, you're going to feel anxious, no matter what button you push. You're going to feel anxious whether you choose OCD and anxiety and you don't go to your session, right? And you continue to live life the way that you've been living it. Or you can choose the ERP anxiety, and they're both going to be anxiety provoking, but at least with ERP, like, you're getting your life back, right? Like, you're digging yourself out of that hole. With the OCD anxiety, your world is just going to get smaller and smaller.
Oh, and that's what it does. It will continue to just swallow you. And you don't want that. That's not what I want for anyone.
Yeah. Swallow is a good way of describing it. Awesome. Let's get another question. I like this one too. Angel, how do I deal with OCD trying to make me think that I'm going to relapse if I have a few bad days? And Debbie, I think you might have been mentioning something like this. Like, I love meditating, but I haven't meditated in 4 days. And you know what? That's okay. Like, I think sometimes people get really rigid and have these, you know, as OCD wants, you know, these really rigid and inflexible expectations. Like, I have to do my exposures. I have to do all of my exposures. I have to do all of them. I have to resist every ritual and And, you know, life happens and we're not able to always do that. We have to introduce some flexibility there. So that can be really difficult for people. And they're going to have these lapses, right? Mm-hmm. So I always talk to people about how it's a difference between there's a difference between a lapse and a relapse. And we make relapse prevention a big part of our treatment. And, you know, as someone kind of progresses into more independence at the end of their treatment, we talk a lot about relapse prevention, kind of identifying, okay, when are you in the green? What does it look like when you're in the green? You're doing your exposures, you're engaging in your activities of daily living, you're feeling good, you're able to hang out with your family, leave the house, so on and so forth. When you're in the yellow, what does that look like? Maybe you're starting to struggle a little bit. You're not doing your exposures. You know, you're doing your exposures more than 50% of the time, but maybe less than 75% of the time. In the red is like, I haven't done exposures in 2 weeks. I'm giving into all of my thoughts. I'm staying in bed. I'm starting to feel depressed. And it's a matter of identifying those small lapses. Those small lapses are going to happen because you're human. They're going to happen. I'm an OCD therapist. I've been doing this for 12 years. I have lived experience with OCD, and there are still days, multiple times a day, where I give in to certain behaviors. I don't meet criteria for the diagnosis anymore. And I think that's what Debbie was saying. Like, you're going to have this forever because everyone has intrusive thoughts, right? But you can still live a very meaningful life and recover from it, and be in recovery from it. So we have to recognize that those small little missteps are going to happen. We just have to recognize, okay, when can we identify it as a misstep? keep it at a misstep so it's nothing more than a stumble, and how do we rein it back in? Debbie, what do you think?
Yes, I think that was a big question that I asked my behavioral therapist, and he said he gets questions every day. Oh my God, I have to go back to the OCDI unit, and which is in treatment, partial hospitalization, and because they messed up, because they did, a compulsion, and it's not the truth. So if you don't think I mess up in the morning, yeah, I do. But then I make deals with it in my, so if I messed up this way, guess what? I don't do what I really want to do over there that my OCD is telling me to do. And so you're never going to live a life without having rituals. I would have to say, I don't know what you feel, Jenna, but I don't know that you may have a day where you have no rituals. You may have a day where you have 2 rituals. You may have a day but are you living a meaningful life? And be fair to yourself. The word I was told, and I always keep it in right. I mean, this is like the most powerful word, flexible.
Yes.
Just be flexible with yourself. Be flexible. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Know how much you're giving in, and forgive yourself. And, you can make deals with your OCD. I've heard that one. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go over there. I'm going to look in the mirror once, and then I'm walking away. I've heard that before. For some people that might be, tricky. For others, I go. So no, you're not going to live a life ritual free. So if someone's told you that, it's not true, and it's okay. It's just how far do you push it, and then move on. Just move on. Don't beat yourself up. Move on.
Yeah,
it's my advice.
I think we can judge we have a bad couple of days, and then we can make that so much worse with our judgment of those bad days.
Absolutely.
It ends up being like, I had a bad couple of days, and now I'm going to, like, consciously or not, right? Not that we want to have more bad days, but we end up having more bad days because we're judging our bad days. And it's like,
yes.
Can we, as soon as possible, just bring it back to a place of acceptance? Like, that was that. People who are fully functional and very happy with their lives have bad days. Like that.
Exactly.
That's the status quo. Like that's
exactly.
And to expect anything above that is not wrong. It's just a complete mistarget. Like you're going to be disappointed with trying to achieve that outcome, because fully functional people who are very happy have bad days.
And they don't think twice. I think it's our irrational thoughts that come into play. Challenge those thoughts and say, okay, is that okay that I was not okay? I love that phrase. It's okay not to be okay.
Right.
What do you do with it? Move on.
And in the OCD cycle, right, I have like the visual in my head. It starts with normal, intrusive thoughts, doubts, worries, uncertainties. These are all normal, right? We all have uncertainties. We all have worries. We'll have doubts. And where OCD goes haywire is that it takes those normal uncertainties that we all experience and it misinterprets them. Absolutely. And so that's what I see happening here is that I've had a few bad days. That's normal. That's a normal human universal shared experience. OCD is just going to come in and misinterpret those few bad days as being significant somehow. And maybe they are. Maybe you learned something from it, like, whoa, there's a pattern going on there. My OCD is trying to latch on to that new theme, and I need to watch out for that.
Exactly.
Learn from it. You can. Learn from it. Exactly. And then move on. Like, move on. Learn from it and move on. Obviously much easier said than done because we beat ourselves up all the time. Cool. Good one. Let's talk about family members a little bit. I'm curious to hear, because I think you referenced some family members here involved in your treatments. Maria, my 17-year-old son was diagnosed with OCD. How can my husband and I help him without enabling him? Really great question, and really thoughtful too. Just how to kind of navigate this process of therapy for your child and adolescent. How can you support them without accommodating them, which is the key. Debbie, you want to maybe talk about your experience a little bit and give me your feedback?
I think that as a parent or anybody who has someone with OCD in their family, I think that it is so hard to watch that person in pain that you love, that's going through that OCD, the compulsion and the rituals, and saying, because I drove people crazy, literally drove them crazy to find things that I couldn't find. But I think first and foremost, I think they need to get treatment. Absolutely. They need the support. That would be my recommendation, because I think, being in it alone as a parent, it's hard enough being a parent, but then having a parent and having a child with OCD just makes it that much harder, because I am a parent. So I would have to say, getting the treatment that they need, and not accommodating them, and getting them to the point where they're just so fed up with being fed up. They have to get to that level. And if you keep accommodating them, in my opinion, they're not going to get fed up of being fed up. And that's what they have to be. I got to the point where I was fed up of being fed up. I was bedridden. I wasn't living a life. There was no life to be had. I wasn't suicidal, but I wasn't living a life. It wasn't a life. So I think the child has to get to the point where they're just fed up of being fed up. I don't know what your thoughts are, Jenna.
Yeah, I definitely think working with children and adolescents is tricky, and we don't know enough to say, obviously, or know from the short little context here, but assuming that this person is wanting therapy, do whatever we can to get this person into therapy, a really good and well-trained ERP therapist for exposure and response prevention. Regular talk therapy won't do it. Other types of therapy won't do it. You need exposure and response prevention. Gold standard treatment for OCD, backed by tons and tons of literature and evidence and research. So let's assume that he's willing. Obviously, we'll just try to band together with him and support him, and encourage the therapist to allow, depending on the age and the state, you should be able to have family sessions, or at least get information from that therapist about what we call family accommodations. Family accommodations are huge in maintaining OCD. These are usually purposeful, or sometimes kind of unconscious, like unaware attempts at trying to help their loved one with OCD, but usually it ends up just accommodating the OCD and, like Maria was saying, kind of enabling the OCD. So being really aware of all the different ways that a family member or loved one can accommodate. There are some really subtle ways, even things like waiting for your loved one, right? Like if everyone's going to go out to dinner, but and you're supposed to leave at 5, but so-and-so is still in the bathroom washing their hands and you wait, that's an accommodation. So little things like that, just being aware of all the little accommodations that family members and loved ones might give into. We want to try to make sure that we're reducing those and stopping those as much as possible in a way that's manageable, hopefully for the individual. And then also, anything that you can do to support your son without enabling the OCD is going to be really key. So think about it more so as like your son is separate from the OCD. How do you support your son without giving into the OCD? So I love you. I'm here for you. And I'm not going to open that door for you. I know that it's okay if that upsets you. I know that that's not good for your treatment. I'm not going to open that door for you. Just as an example, like if he was diagnosed with contamination OCD and he's used to people opening doors for him, but it could be anything, right? So I love you. I'm here for you. Like, I'd love to hang out together once you're finished, but I'm not going to do this for you.
And I think, Jenna, don't you think it's important also, I think, not labeling them? I think that's the hard, like, this is your OCD. Yeah. Labeling will send them off the roof. Like if anybody says that to me, or it's just, nobody wants to be labeled. This is your OCD.
Especially when they're in the moment, right? Like you're either just going to frustrate them because you don't understand, or they're going to be like, yeah, I know. And I still feel the need to do it because that's the nature of OCD, right? Like that's the maddening of OCD, is that they know that's OCD. They feel the need to do it. Right. So, I think too, like forcing children and adolescents to do things, it can feel like we don't want to push them into cold water. Like they really have to make the decision on their own. Exactly. I fear sometimes that parents like force their children into therapy before they're ready, and it can feel like it can backfire because they just weren't ready and they get a bad taste in their mouth for therapy. And then maybe 5 years later, when they are ready for therapy, they have that bad taste in their mouth. And so with kids and adolescents, if they're not ready for therapy, sometimes we have to work through the back door and reduce those accommodations. Like Debbie was saying, we have to kind of get them to get fed up with the OCD. This is for not just kids and adolescents, but if the way that they're living with the OCD isn't inconvenient enough, if they're not fed up with it, they probably won't seek out that therapy, right? So, if they're not willing for that treatment right off the bat, they're not ready to go and give it a go, sometimes it's helpful to kind of work through the back door by reducing those accommodations, letting them know one way or the other that there are consequences to their behaviors, and that the family can't stop anymore because of the OCD. Like, we love you, and we're not going to let the OCD take its stake in our household anymore. IOCDF.org also has a lot of really great family resources. So that's the International OCD Foundation, IOCDF.org. Lots of really good stuff for families. And anything that you find on family accommodation for OCD is going to be helpful. It's such a huge research topic and professional topic. There's lots of good stuff out there. Even like things to say versus not to say. You could find some really good stuff. Dun, dun, dun. Have some other ones. Trying to find some that would be helpful to just like a lot of people. We haven't talked about this. This is a big one. Debbie, I don't know if you struggled with rumination. I feel like people with OCD, I don't know anyone who has OCD who doesn't engage in this behavior mentally for a little bit, or at least a little bit of the time. So Madeline, we'll go ahead and try to answer this question because I feel like so many people can resonate and they struggle with rumination. So rumination, what I define it as and what I kind of view rumination as is any kind of like mental engaging with a thought. And that can be really general. You could obviously go more specific from there. I think of rumination as like the big umbrella term, but usually rumination is like that analytical thinking, like trying to analyze situations, trying to figure situations out. It's like OCD's version of problem solving, even though it's not actually problem solving, because rumination is just like this cycle of incessant and repetitive thinking that doesn't actually get anywhere. It's not forward moving or structured like problem solving is. It's just thinking about the same thing again and again in a million different ways. I actually don't find it to be that different functionally from worry. But that's another nerdy topic. So first of all, I guess, Debbie, let's talk about like, what was your experience with rumination, if any?
I would probably have to say it was just a tape that was playing over and over and over again. So if I had, a thought in my head, I wanted to buy a dog. That was like a big one. I wanted to go get like the thought would just keep going, and I would just ruminate over it, and then I would just keep thinking about, okay, so do I want this one? No, I want this one. Do I want this? Rather than when I have these amazing thoughts in my head about like something that I want to have a completion to. So there's a beginning and an end. Whereas rumination for me, there's no beginning and there's no end. It's just a continuation of a tape playing over and over and over again, and there's no end result. And so for someone, when we don't ruminate and we actually are thinking in a positive manner, there's actually a great end result, because what we're looking for when we think and we're not ruminating, we're looking for that conclusion. So that would be kind of the difference for me, and what I think the difference is between a positive way to think, because I have a great brain. I mean, it can do great things. But rumination to me is when it just goes over and over and over, and it doesn't, like, you can't, and then there's just, it's a tape replay.
I usually tell part of my like psychoeducation for OCD includes talking about how our brains are really creative. Our brains are the same brains that came up with the airplane. and the iPhone 12 or whatever the heck we're on now are the same brains that create these wildly depressive and anxiety provoking tapes in our brains, right? So they're creative, and that's a great thing in the right context. They can also be really like scarily creative, like you're saying, creative in a bad way, in a scary way. So how to stop ruminating? I think the first step here, I really love Dr. Michael Greenberg's kind of 4-step process of conceptualizing and stopping rumination. The first step, according to Dr. Michael Greenberg, my understanding of it anyway, is a thought pops into your head. They all start with A's, which is helpful. A thought pops into your head, which again, you can't help and isn't necessarily bad. Thoughts pop into my head all the time. Debbie, even in her recovery, has thoughts pop into her head all the time. So a thought popping into your head is not necessarily a bad thing. It just is what it is. It's just a thought popping into your head. The second step to this is awareness. And awareness, again, isn't necessarily bad. We need to be aware of bad habits. It's okay to be aware, oh, yep, I'm having that thought again. And those things are fine. Where it gets haywire, according to what Dr. Greenberg says, and again, my interpretation of it, is between steps 2 and 3, between awareness and attention. So attention is where it can start to get haywire, right? So instead of being aware of like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to get a dog today, you really hone in and you're like, but what kind of dog? And when would I get it? And oh my gosh, what if this happened? And what about this option? And what about this option? And what about this option? So instead of awareness, which is fine, awareness is great, then OCD kind of zooms in and it brings it to this attention level where that's not good. We don't want to bring attention to these things. We don't want to like zoom in on a particular thought and give it a whole lot of attention. The best analogy that I can come up with for this is a security camera. So if a security camera kind of has 2 modes, right? So security camera mode number 1 is where it's really slow and it takes in everything. It's not zooming in on anything in particular, but it just kind of is aware of all the details, all the big picture. It's just aware. It's aware, but it never stops. And that's fine. Attention, meaning where we start to ruminate, is where that security camera stops and it zooms in. And so that's where it becomes detrimental. That's where we're getting compulsive. And so what we need to do is try to stay in that awareness zone as much as possible. You're like, yep, I'm aware that that thought is telling me to shave my legs a certain way. Not going to give that any more attention. And then the 4th step is that analysis. So you can give it a lot of attention and kind of zoom in like that camera. And then to give it even further analysis is full-on rumination. Like that, I believe the last 2 pieces there, attention and analysis, are within our control. They feel like they're not in our control because they're very habitual, and things that are very habit-based feel like they're not in our control, like skin picking or other mannerism, like anything that we do by habit. It can feel like it's not in our control. With the right guidance, the right kind of training, the right education, the right therapist, you'll be able to identify your triggers. You'll be able to identify kind of where the thought pops into your head, you become aware of it, and how do you stop it at that point? How do you get to a place of awareness of your thoughts? And then you can choose actively not to give it any more attention or analysis. So long story short, how can I stop ruminating? Try to master that process of the 1 through 4. A thought pops into your head, awareness. Again, those 2 things are awesome. Those 2 things are great, not within your control. Do those all day. Where it starts to be that fork in the road for me, and what I teach my members at OCD is attention, not good. Attention is where we take that camera and we zoom in, like hyper focus on it and try to figure it out. And then we turn that into further analysis, which is that step 4. And we want to try everything that we possibly can do to resist those 3rd and 4th steps. So doing whatever you can possibly do to not give that thought any attention and to not give that thought any potential analysis. Debbie, what do you think?
I think I fully agree with you. And I think challenging the thought. Sometimes I will challenge it. And sometimes I will, like, I'll give you an example for my groups. I'm supposed to, I'm supposed to, did you hear what I said? Supposed to. I do a meditation with them every single night, usually Monday through Friday. And for the past 2 weeks, I have literally shut my computer and put it down. And it's not what I really wanted to do. In my mind, it said, no, you have to you have to do meditation for your group. And no, I don't. Like, that's okay. It's okay. Like, I really do think that it's a matter of like self-preservation too. Like, and really honoring your truth. Challenge the thought. And like, that's the next step too, I think, is like challenging that thought and like, and really sticking with your truth and what you really want. I don't know if that makes any sense to people, but I think that it's so important to really stay true and to be okay with just, not go that extra step, like you said, Jenna, and not get like really laser focused on me having to have that certain type of dog or having to have that meditation that night. Because when it gets there, I know that I need to challenge myself and shut that computer and say, done, next day.
Yeah, I love that. I think what I'm hearing you say too, Debbie, is like really remembering remembering your values, right? And making the decision to pivot. Making the decision to pivot. Like, I can either continue to ruminate about this. I can either continue to go down this rabbit hole, even though it feels like I'm going to solve something, even though I know I'm not. I can continue to ruminate because it feels like I'm going to feel better, even though I know that I'm not. Or as hard as that is, I'm going to try to go off of the, advice that I know. I'm going to try to let that go right now. And I'm going to try to continue on with my, regularly scheduled programming.
Exactly.
And I don't have to, OCD is often going to come in the form of a question, right? So what if that's not the right dog? Or are you really doing this the right way? What's going to happen if you don't meditate? It's always going to come in the form of some type of question. Your job is to not answer that question and to do whatever it takes to not answer that question.
And let me tell you that each day that I didn't do the meditation, it was so freeing. It was so unbelievable that I was actually so kind to myself, that I actually put my values first. And I knew that my group would still be okay. I even had one guy private message me, you meditating? I said, no, I'm taking a break from it. He was like, cool. Like, I think that
because you're in control. That just shows the energy of like you're in charge. Like, you call the shots.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And it's so empowering. And if I can just send that message to all of you, that the empowerment that you eventually get is so it's just worth anything, honestly, anything.
Mm-hmm. And in the moment it didn't, though, right? Like, in the moment, there were moments, like, I'm sure when you were throwing your pocketbook and you were throwing your laundry and like, it didn't feel like this was the right decision, right?
Yes, it was. I said, I'm putting them all in together. I'm not looking. And I kept on like, and they're like, no. And they just like, literally as fast as I could. And like, but I learned like here, like even when I got home, like, if people don't like the way I do my laundry now, it's like thrown in all. I just throw it in. That's it. Done. Do I sometimes check labels? Absolutely.
Because
Am I okay with it? Yeah, because I'm human, and that's okay. But I move on.
Mm-hmm. And we're not going to judge. We're not going to judge that, right?
Now, if I judge myself, where am I going to get? Nowhere. So move on. Move on and be okay.
I feel inspired after this. I feel inspired. So I can only imagine like how other people are feeling. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I hope that everyone can get to that point of like, just like finding their own inner badass. Like, I deserve to feel better. I don't want to live my life this way anymore. Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, because ERP truly is, you're going to get the best bang for your buck. It's the most effective treatment. And it doesn't take that long to see if you're with the right therapist. Obviously, like I've only ever done ERP. So I know that there are some people out there who maybe don't do it well, and you have to find the right fit with a therapist, and you have to find someone you feel good with. And it might be a slow journey for some people, and you have to honor that journey. But I am just such an ERP nerd. Like, it can help. It helps so many people. You just have to want it. Like, you just have to want a better life more than you want reassurance, or more than you want to go and solve that rumination thought. You have to want a better life. You have to want what's going to make you feel better 15 years from now, not what's going to make you feel better for the next 5 minutes.
It's short term. It's just the same as substance use. It's short term. The first few sips is a short term, but the end result is, with substance use, they want you dead. Alcoholism and OCD wants to control you. Mm-hmm. Where is there a win in that? There's no win in any of it. It's so worth it. The ERP, like, if I can tell people, ERP, is it scary? Well, I think anything that you do for the first time is scary. Anything. But
it's so freeing. It's so freeing.
It's beyond freeing.
I have wine exposures. Every day I do exposures.
Yes, it's so beyond freeing. Yes, because you're taking back your control. There's nothing worse than something controlling you and you think it's making you feel better. But if you really sat there right now and thought about it, for how many seconds is it making you feel better before it's telling you to do it again, and then to do it again, and then to do it again? You're never going to win with it.
I'm going to steal an analogy from Dr. McGrath. In one of his videos, he talks about how in Charlie Brown, like, he goes to kick the ball, and Lucy, I think Lucy is her name, she always goes and she picks up the football, right? And no matter how many times Charlie goes to kick the football, Lucy was always going to pick up the ball. Lucy was always going to pick it up. Like, no matter how many times Charlie tried, she was always going to pick it up. And OCD is the same exact way. Like, it entices you and seduces you and makes you think, like, just one more time. Like, if you do this, this is it this time. Like, this time I'm going to let you kick it and you're going to get it. And it was never going to let you do that.
Nope. It'll keep taking and taking and taking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Debbie, because you are like the motivator master and you've been providing so much love and hope to people, I think we have one more, and probably not the only one, but what do you do for people out there who kind of feel hopeless from time to time? Some people want the help, but feel it's hopeless at times. What if someone out there is kind of feeling hopeless, like they're, they can't even imagine taking that first step? What would you tell them?
Okay, first I want to honor the fact of feeling hopeless. And I want to honor that, because I had to honor my negative emotions as much as my positive emotions. So let me honor that it can feel hopeless. And that's okay. It's okay to feel hopeless. But I think the question is, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with that feeling? So for me, I can feel hopeless. I think that's a human feeling, or I can fearful, or I can feel sad. And maybe it'll last a day, maybe it'll last an hour, maybe it'll last 5 minutes. But I guess the biggest message I can say is that there is hope, and that there is treatment out there, and there are people. If I say this to my group, if somebody hasn't told you today that you're loved, wanted, and needed, I'll say it to you, because you are. You're needed in this world. And there is a world that's worth living. And it's a beautiful world. Yeah, we hear all negative things in this world, and I kind of stay away from them because I don't need to be wrapped up in that stuff. I just don't. I'll hear the negative stuff. Trust me, the negative moves fast. I try to stick in the land of the positive zone and positivity and embrace myself with that. So I would say embrace what you're having, because the more you fight that hopelessness, the more the hopelessness is going to honestly build on itself. And then say, and then find that inner strength. And I know that's really hard, but if you can take anything away from Jenna and I speaking tonight, know that there is treatment for this and that it's okay to feel hopeless, because I did. I was at the bottom. I truly was. I was at the bottom. And I was so scared to leave my house. I was told I'd be there for 3 months, and I was there for 6 weeks. I worked so hard, but it was the best thing I ever did. And did I think my life would ever get better? No, not at the time. I thought that was my life, but it's not your life. And you don't deserve that life. So I used to call them, when we have our rooms, and I would joke with the counselors, small pity parties. We're allowed small pity parties. That's okay. And then move on. And it's a life worth living, let me tell you. It's a life worth living. There's nothing that I can even say that would let you know that, I have things that I have bought myself in this room that have created such zen and such peace for me, like signs that say joy, peace, calm, faith, grateful. I have my little dog sitting next to me. I mean, I have so much stuff around me that surrounds me with just such inspiration. And trust me, I am no different than any of you out there. No different. We're all speaking the same language. An addict's an addict. They're still speaking the same language. They might have drank different. Someone who has OCD, I'm no different than you. I saw all sorts of people with OCD. Mine happened to be perfectionism and intrusive thoughts and checking. But other people had other things, but I felt right at home. I'm no different than you. And if I can do it, you can do it. So there's hope.
Debbie, I want you to come back like every week.
Okay. I'm in.
I want, like, who's not feeling good after that? Oh my gosh. My goodness. Feeling the validation. That was really great. Debbie, we're going to have you back, and I will get you on a support group with me.
Sounds good to me.
So wonderful. So we're at time. I want to honor everyone's time here. So Debbie, tell people where they can find you, if they want to. I have like legit chills and shivers. Debbie rocked it tonight, you guys. Everyone is so grateful for you, Debbie. I don't know if you can see the comments, but
I can't see them. I think I need to get new glasses. I do.
People are
I need to go up.
Grateful. They're just like, let's everyone give Debbie some love while she tells us.
Thank you.
I'm doing an ERP while listening since it gave me such courage. Thank you. Please come back, Debbie. Thank you both so much. Oh, I'm going to cry.
Oh my goodness. I will absolutely be back. I will do, honestly, we have a saying in AA, and I love their sayings, is you have to give to get. And it's the truth. And the reason why I came up with these groups, and the reason why I'm on a live, because let me tell you something. I don't have social phobia, but is it a little bit outside my comfort zone to go on Facebook Live? Yes. But if I changed one person's life today, then I've done my job. Because that's amazing. Because I don't want anybody living with OCD and feeling that they have to suffer. There's no need. But remember, honor those negative emotions. Honor the positive emotions. They're emotions. That's it. Challenge your thoughts. And you know what? In the morning, I'm sorry, say the F word to the OCD.
Say it. Say the F word.
Say it. Just tell it, because I do. Because and just remember, I am strong, but I also suffer sometimes. I also live a life sometimes where I go, oh my, like, come on, are you kidding me? I do. So I don't want to portray myself as having my life as being like No, I have some real hard days. I want you all to know that. I do have my OCD days. I do. I do. I have more than, but I forgive myself and I move on. That's the key. Move on and forgive yourself. Be kind to yourself. Learn what self-love is. And I'm still learning. It's going to be a journey for the rest of my life. I'm on a journey. I'm on a mission. If you want to come with us, come. If you want to live in the OCD, you don't want to live there. Trust me. Don't let it control you. No way. We are going to break this stigma, and we are going to put it in its place where it belongs.
Oh my goodness, you are such a warrior. Where can we find more of you? I know where to find you, and I will find you.
You know where to find me.
where can all these lovely people find more of you in your groups?
Well, one of them is called Serenity Promises. It's SEREN. See if I know how to spell SERENITY. SerenityPromises.com is my website. Then Serenity Promises has a Facebook group that you're all more than welcome to come. Then there's OCD We Stand United. I have a private group. They're all private, by the way. And then I have one that's OCD and addiction disorders. So anybody who feels that they have any type of addictions, and I'm thinking of maybe possibly having some offshoot groups that I'll drag you, Jenna, into.
Yes, I would love to. I was just gonna say, I would love to.
Yeah,
need you more. This community needs you. Oh my gosh, you're so special. You're like an angel. I don't use that word often because I hate that when people just kind of throw that around, but you're literally like, you're so special. I'm so happy that we got you on here, and we will see more of you for sure. We'll stay in touch. So yeah, make sure that you look at the comments. Oh my gosh, you're getting so much love. So you guys, thank you for joining us for the live. This will be recorded. If you feel like you need a pep talk, this would be a good one to kind of bookmark and come back to for a nice little pep talk. So Debbie, thank you so much. This has been one of the best lives, just with all the encouragement and love and sharing your story. So I honor you so much. And I'm so happy that you were here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.